Hi, thank you for joining me here. I'm Danny Seaman at the JNS Studios. You're watching Straight Up. And straight up, I want to give you the events in Israel. This past week, we've been increasing our pressure on the Hamas in the Gaza Strip, at the same time taking out threats to Israel from the Hezbollah in Lebanon, from jihadists in Syria. The Houthis, the United States, have been taken care of in Yemen. There's been pressure growing on Iran to respond to the United States. The Prime Minister of Israel went to Hungary this past weekend, and this week will be moving to the United States to meet with President Trump. But the big thing for Israelis this week has actually been our internal strife. What for very long has been presented and projected abroad as the efforts on the behalf of the hostages has come out and has been, the shroud has been taken off of the real efforts. And this has been in the past, increased in the past few weeks with demonstrations against the government of the State of Israel. But what we're finding out more and more now is that there are elements within the government of Israel, such as the Attorney General's office, the legal system, and now the security element, the Shin Bet, the Shabak, as we call it here in Israel, have been playing a part in the political landscape against the legitimacy of the government of Israel. And for this purpose, I wanted to bring on to the show today a person who is an influencer on Israeli social media. I've interviewed him on my radio show on Galei Israel Radio, and I thought it would be interesting to hear him and his take on what is happening in the recent 48 hours here in Israel with the security element and with the exposures of the Israeli Shin Bet and its political involvement against the government of Israel. Thank you, Moshe, for joining us today. A lot of things have been going on in Israel in the past few days, as I mentioned in my opening. But one major thing has occurred in the past 48 hours and has come up in Israeli media. And that has to do with the head of the Shabak. The Shabak, as I said before, is the Israeli, I guess you can say it's the equivalent of the FBI. In Judea and Samaria, the head of the Jewish branch of the Israeli Shabak. How can you comment on, what can you comment on that?
Well, I think this is the most vivid example of how rogue the Shin Bet under Ronen Bar has become. What was introduced yesterday to the Israeli public by the number one investigative journalist in Israel, Ayala Hasson, was a conversation, a telephone conversation between the head of the Jewish department in Shabak and the chief police officer of the Samaria and Judea district, where the Shabak guy is asking the policeman to go and arrest people, and he brags and says that we are doing it all the time, left, right, and center, without any evidence, without any reason.
That's because
and probable cause.
The police officer
rejected, refused.
He said, I can't just pick them up. And he was talking specifically about Jewish people in Judea and Samaria.
Oh, 100%, 100%. So what came out of this discussion is that there is a routine,
right,
that probably is prevailing for many years already, where the Shabak is arresting people from the Jewish communities of Judea and Samaria without probable cause, without any reason, without any shred of evidence. And not only that he's asking him to arrest him, he's asking him to try and break him, to put him in a cell with rats and so on and so forth. He calls them schmucks. So, I mean, this is mind-blowing. This is mind-blowing, and this is an outrage, and the Israeli public is really, 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 angry.
Because it's not only without due process and without due cause. He's also talking down about them. A lot of these people that he wanted to, and who have been arrested recently, are people who serve in the IDF, reservists, and he talks down about them. He used the word schmuck to talk about them. These people have been sacrificing their lives and have been over 200, 300 days in reserve duty, and this is the attitude. They're not posing a threat. The Shabak is supposed to protect Israel from threats to the nation itself. These people pose no threat at all.
No threat at all. But, for us to really understand the underlying reasons for this type of talk, or this type of behavior from the Shabak, we need to go back before the establishment of Israel even. The Shabak was established in 1950,
right?
I mean, officially. But it was based on the Shin Yud. Shin Yud is Shirut Yediot, or the intelligence service of the Haganah, which is the pre-IDF organization that Ben-Gurion had. And the Shin Yud was tasked with the Saison. So if you recall, during the British mandate, Jews actually turned in other Jews to the British government. Who did that was people from the Shin Yud. And they looked at the Jabotinsky people, or the right-wing people, as enemies. Right?
So nothing's changed.
Nothing has changed. And since this is the DNA that created the Shabak, at least in this Jewish department, this DNA...
But I have to stress here that when they were created, the Jewish division, it was against those who were collaborating, was to identify anybody collaborating at that time in the 50s, 60s, 70s. It was those collaborating with the Soviet Union and with the what is now Russia, and those who were against the West. So they were created in order to identify threats to the state of Israel, foreign threats to the state of Israel, using agents in Israel.
Yeah.
And suddenly it shifted.
Not suddenly, it shifted in Oslo. So what happened in Oslo, or immediately after Oslo, is that the Shabak started with Carmi Gilon, who was the head of the Shabak when late Yitzhak Rabin was assassinated. They viewed any threat to the Accord, to the Oslo Accord, as a threat to the government, to the country. And what happened is that generation after generation, I think after him, after Carmi Gilon came Ami Ayalon, a very well-known figure from the protests against the government, with very hard, he's talking very hard talk, He's talking about mutiny, like civilian mutiny. He's talking about we cannot win this unless we do something outside of the boundaries of the law. This is what he says on podiums.
It's interesting you're saying that, because these people in the demonstrations against the government are talking about violent, not resistance, but mutiny against the state of Israel. And they're not being investigated. They're not being questioned.
No,
not at all.
Not at all. Not at all. And nobody even dared to look at the situation in Sde Teman. I mean, there was a very clear case where someone took and actually forged a video from two different videos.
For our viewers and listeners, this Sde Teman incident is this incident being used against not only Israel, but against Jews right now, as if there's some evidence that Israeli soldiers in this prison violated and assaulted the terrorists from October 7th. And it was later found out that this film was totally false and was mixed, and they're still not investigating the people who caused tremendous damage to the state of Israel with that film.
Not only damage to the state of Israel, think about it, that when this video came out, and now there's no argument, everybody agrees, including Channel 12, who was the one broadcasting it, that this video is not real, right?
It was cooked.
It's cooked.
Right.
It's cooked. So at the time it went out, they had many hostages in their hands. They still have 59 of them. To get back at them, because they hear we are raping Nukhba people here, right? So it really put the lives of our hostages at risk. This is a big security risk, and the Shabak didn't do nothing about it.
So, but this incident this week with the head of the Jewish branch, it comes together with other things that have happened recently with the Shabak, and not only the arrest of people around the prime minister, which it's ironic to say we've become used to that. And by the way, nothing in the past of accusations against those who are close to the prime minister. There's absolutely nothing come out of the court cases. On the contrary, it's finding out how all these things have been cooked also by the Attorney General's office. But now, not only have they arrested members close to the prime minister because of suspicion of assisting Qatar, etc., they're also arresting journalists.
Oh, okay.
And the editor of the Jerusalem Post was arrested. And that's by Shabak.
By Shabak. Look, we need to I would suggest let's go up 40,000 feet, okay? Look at this case, but try to understand the bigger picture here. All right. Let's look at all those chiefs of Shabak that we heard of just in recent few months, and what were their actions vis-a-vis the Israeli democracy. Right. Okay, so let's start with Carmi Gilon. Carmi Gilon participated in the most violent type of protests, and one day he bit his own hand trying to blame the officers on site, and he was caught because the whole thing was videoed. He couldn't say anything anymore.
He accused the police for assaulting him.
And
videos came out later showing him
biting his own hand. All right. The next one is Ami Ayalon. We talked about this gentleman already. Next one is Yoram Cohen. Yoram Cohen came out with a sentence which is, I mean, it's so messed up. I don't know where to begin condemning it. He was saying that the Shabak is restraining itself vis-a-vis the prime minister. Again, the Shabak is using restraint vis-a-vis the prime minister, which is by law, it's commander-in-chief.
Right.
Okay? So that's Yoram Cohen for you. And then came Nadav Argaman, the previous chief of Shabak, the one who stopped or almost stopped all human interactions with Gaza,
right,
and led to the fact that we couldn't have even one human resource or source to give us any kind of information before the attack.
Because he relied on high-tech and
only technology,
technology,
and they relied on the assumption that Hamas is deterred,
right,
and Hamas is not looking for any big problems with us.
So they had no human intelligence in Gaza.
None whatsoever. Thousands of people came at us 6:30 in the morning, and none of the people's wives or mothers or sons or daughters or any kind of bakery that bakes pitas in the morning, to call us and say, look, something strange is happening.
Right.
Further, even when they had the technological signals like SIM cards being activated and people going down underground, they didn't have anyone to call, to verify or to kill the theory that there is an attack coming up. So what did he do, Ronen Bar? He called the Egyptian intelligence to tell him whether we are going to be attacked from Gaza or not. And this is the person entrusted with intelligence from Gaza. This is his primary job, more than Khalifa, by the way.
Right.
Okay. So
Khalifa, who is the commander of the IDF intelligence.
IDF intelligence, right? So Ronen Bar is the direct responsible for this mess, okay, from the intelligence standpoint. And not only he couldn't come up with any proper source, he never bothered to call Netanyahu. He never bothered to call Gallant. He never bothered to call the level above him. He took it upon himself to close this case. He sent the tequila guys, you bring people in, he calls the Egyptian intelligence leaders.
Asked him if they know what's going on.
Asked him if there was...
We still don't know everything that went on. That's still...
Something really wrong happened there.
Right.
So now going back to Nadav Argaman, I just want to give you the list of people so we will understand what's going on here. Nadav Argaman, just 2 weeks ago, Nadav Argaman, during a televised interview with Ilana Dayan, is saying, I don't recall the exact words, but this is what he said. He said, if Netanyahu does something that I deem illegal, that is illegal,
right,
I will expose information that I was privy to during my tenure as the chief of Shabak, which is personal and might be embarrassing to Netanyahu.
No, you've sort of wanted to threaten the prime minister that they will reveal things about him, which is absolutely...
It's insane. Just think now, as Americans, think of the head of the security service of the USA blackmailing the sitting president of the United States and telling him, if you're going to do something which is completely within your legal rights, that means to dismiss Ronen Bar, I, Nadav Argaman, Ronen's predecessor, will tell things about you and your family.
That's unbelievable, because the Shabak is also head of the Secret Service of Israel. These persons are with the families, with the children, with the wives, with the leaders of Israel, not only the prime minister. They're with them almost 24 hours a day. They know everything around them. To think that they would betray that trust, and they're obligated to maintain the trust. And I was a civil servant. I worked with the prime minister's office. We had the camera crews, and we've seen things over the years, nothing illegal or anything, but you can embarrass any politician like you can embarrass anyone. Who of us have not had anything, we did things or said things or behaved in a manner that we wouldn't want other people to know about? Everybody has something on them. But for them to use this as extortion against the prime minister for political reasons, this is where we're at the moment.
This is where we're at the moment.
And it's astounding.
It's astounding. But I think the Israeli population, the Israeli people, have now woke up to this problem. We have a mega problem. Okay, this organization is incompatible with a free and democratic society.
Exactly.
And I believe that, and I've been advocating it for months already. I think I started as early as August or September last year.
Oh, we spoke on my radio program a few
That's
weeks
correct.
ago, and you mentioned it there as well, so I can testify to that.
Yeah, I think we are not dealing with a personal problem of Ronen Bar or Nadav Argaman or whatever. They are coming out of each other's bellies like babushkas, like the small Russian puppet that is coming out.
Yeah.
So the next one around, is the same. The same DNA all the way to Shai, to the
You're
beginning
saying
of
there's something fundamentally wrong with
We are
the
dealing
Shabak.
here with a structural problem.
Exactly.
This is an ideologically extreme organization that has went rogue. The fact that Ronen Bar was asked by the government to leave his position, and he's saying, no, I will not leave my position. It is unheard of.
And by the way, legally, the only one who can replace him is the prime minister with the agreement of the cabinet.
And they unanimously
Exactly. And they
voted him out.
Right.
Okay. Nobody wants to see him anymore. He's not coming to any meetings, as far as I understand from the
He's
media.
responsible for October 7th. He was the person who was in charge of gathering the intelligence. He failed at that position. They let it on for the past year and a half because we were in the middle of a war. The prime minister did not want to shake up the system. But once we went into the first phase of the ceasefire, they asked him to leave, to submit his report, which he refused to submit.
Yep.
And since then, he's been undermining the government and the prime minister in order not to leave by the instruction of the attorney general of the state of Israel. Yeah. So this is much broader than just the Shabak.
There is collision there, and it's a very suspicious behavior. Right. I think they're trying to hide things up. I think they're trying to manipulate the public. I don't believe them at all. But I don't think the reason to dismiss him is in my mind, in my view, it's not the 7th of October. He made a big mistake. He should be dismissed, obviously. If I was the prime minister, I would have kicked him out on the 8th. But this is not the story.
Right.
The story is what he's doing to our democracy. I feel threatened. But what evolved since is huge. This is mega.
Right.
This is he stands in total defiance of any democratic logic. This cannot happen. This cannot continue. This has to stop.
He lost the trust of those who are employing him. He is supposed to be providing the government, the cabinet, and the prime minister with the intelligence, and they found out that he was being operated by others in collusion with a foreign government, or should I say, a foreign administration. And we discussed this on the radio show as well back a few weeks ago, and it's already been exposed the extent to which the former administration in the United States was involved with the security elements here and trying to topple the government of the state of Israel. So let's address that issue.
Okay, so maybe even before we go there, I want to go there, but just before that, I want to mention one more thing. One of the top priorities of Shabak is to safeguard the government or the prime minister.
The elected government.
The elected government, the prime minister. Look what happened. A mob with torches and with nooses came all the way to Balfour, to his official house, to the prime minister's official house. One of them even broke the lock on one of the gates. Where was the Shabak?
It's amazing you're saying that, because here I was already willing to move to these aspects of failure of the Shabak. As we said, they're part of the Secret Service that are supposed to protect the prime minister of the state of Israel. He had flares shot in his direction of his house that hit his house. These people threatened that they would do this in advance, and they did it. These are former high-ranking officers of the IDF. It's not a hidden underground movement. These are open threats against the prime minister, and he failed. The head of the Shabak, Bar, failed at addressing and eliminating this threat to the prime minister. He's failed at several things, not only on the October 7th.
Exactly. So talk about all those open discussions about killing Netanyahu.
Right.
Talk about open talks about having a civil war here.
All right.
Okay. What is the Shabak doing about it?
No.
Is he calling any of these people to questioning? to understand what's going on?
I mentioned before.
Make him stop talking like this?
They were very quick to pick up on suspicion of something, the editor of the Jerusalem Post, but these people who are speaking out about violent resistance and uprising have not even been questioned.
Not even been questioned.
And that's where this problem is.
Okay, so to me, this silence is basically in order to encourage them. It's exactly like the silence that Herzi Halevi had against the people refusing to serve in the military.
Right.
It's a way to encourage. And he's been encouraged, Ronen Bar, has been encouraged by the, I would say, the legal establishment. You mentioned the Attorney General, Bar Rav Miara, who is actually helping him out to stay in his position. They came up with this bogus investigation called Qatargate.
Right.
All of a sudden with this bullshit stories, and all in order to save his own position.
To preserve him.
To preserve his position because it's a power junction.
Right.
Okay, it's a power junction. Okay, so to me, the answer is not by replacing Ronen Bar, because we'll get the next babushka. Okay. And if you want to do to create a real DNA change, you need to go 3, 4, 5 layers deep into the Shabak. There you will find water, by the way, because the ranks are Israeli population. They don't adhere to this, very extremist type of policies. They are not coming from this revolving door of idealistically radicalized elite that is manning the top of the organization.
Or we can put it very clearly. It's the Oslo era, which is, since October 7th, is passé. It's over. Oslo is finished. Yet you have these remnants of the people who were brought into power around that time, who view things very corruptedly, politically, and that shouldn't be the situation within.
And they have managed, also in the Supreme Court,
right,
to create a self-appointing system where the father will appoint his son, will appoint his grandson, and we are basically, Ronen Bar is part of an ancestry of people who are self-appointing. He's now saying, I will move if you let me appoint my successor. This is unheard of. The government of Israel
it's outrageous.
Voted you out unanimously, and you're saying to the government, I'm not going unless you let me pick my successor. Okay, so this is where we're at. Since we are at this point now, I would suggest to the government, leave this guy alone. Don't talk about this guy anymore. Staying, not staying, disregard him. Don't call him to any meeting, kill his emails, do whatever you want. Do without him. For me, he's air. For me, he's no longer the Shabak head. What we need to do, we need to dismantle Shabak and to redistribute the different functions of Shabak. Okay, so Shabak has a few functions that are not synergetically correlated. Okay. You have the matter of safeguarding the prime minister and top
the
officials.
Secret Service security,
like the Praetorian Guard.
Right.
Take it out. Take the whole thing out with the school of counterterror and put it under the government, under the prime minister directly.
I believe the FBI in the United States are under or were in the past, I don't know if this has ever changed, of the Ministry of the Secretary of Finance. It originated there.
Okay.
For whatever
I didn't
reason.
know that.
Yeah, for whatever reason they had. You can do that. You don't have to move it to finance, but you can move it to the prime minister's office.
Move it out, yeah. Next one around is this Jewish department.
Right.
Okay, the Jewish department. First of all, you need to downsize it significantly.
It doesn't have to be a whole division.
Look, they had so many sources in the Jewish community. They had no one in Gaza. Come on, this is a joke.
Amazing.
This is a joke. The allocation of focus, the allocation of timeshare, of mind share, of money is completely ridiculous.
By the way, going back to the head of the Jewish division, people are saying that he's nervous because he hasn't been able, because he's literally failed at providing insights into what is happening among the Jewish community in Judea and Samaria. And I'm saying this very cynically because why has he failed? Not because he hasn't been able to identify, because there is no attempt by the Jews in Judea and Samaria to undermine the state of Israel, and this came from the American administration, and they've been promoting this in the past year and a half, as if there is some movement of terrorists against Arabs in Judea and Samaria. They couldn't expose any of that because it doesn't exist. Do you have violent eruptions? Yes, because there's conflict between Jews and Arabs there. But it's not because there's an organized effort on the part of Jews in Judea and Samaria to assault the Arabs. So it's not that he's failed. So he had to make up stuff to justify his existence.
I tell you, this is so malicious.
Exactly.
I want to tell the American people that probably don't know this. After he's asked the police, the head of the police in Samaria and Judea to play along and arrest people without due cause, and the guy refused, what did the Shabak do?
Exactly.
They arrested the police guy. They arrested the chief of police of Judea and Samaria in broad daylight. Guns out. The guy was driving in his car, probably with his daughter, if I'm not mistaken.
With his daughter.
They took him out and they have arrested him for not playing along with them. And we are hearing with our own ears that the guy is saying we are left, right, and center arresting people without due cause. Why don't you go ahead and do that and put them with the rats?
And when he refused to cooperate with the head of the Shin Bet, they arrested him.
Mm-hmm.
And they created this whole impression as if he had violated some law. So while we have a battle here by the left-wing elements, the Israeli media that are talking about a threat to democracy coming from the state of Israel and the government of Israel, what we in fact are having is those elements on the left wing have been promoting this, and they have been encouraging the Shin Bet to arrest people who don't fall in line with their left-wing political view.
Yeah.
That is what in fact is happening.
Exactly. So to me, all this extreme behavior by Ronen Bar, by Barav Miara, by the people supporting them, is a behavior of people who understand that the castle walls have been breached.
Right.
They are now retreating. They are up at the tower. They are fighting the last war. This is the last war for the remnants of this power that they've gained, and they are reluctant to relinquish.
And just to stress that point, and one of the problems I have with those who are following what's happening in Israeli politics, to talk about that the government wanted to reform the judicial system, just like with the Shabak, we're not talking about reform. I had a problem, and I've said this on the radio several times, I've had a problem with them using the term reform. We're not talking about reforming. We're talking about bringing it back to its original, what is it supposed to be doing?
Yeah.
Its original purposes.
Yeah.
And here, these elements in the judiciary and in the security elements refuse to go back to the past because they gain power through this.
Yes.
And this is the essence, and this is what the essence of what we're dealing with.
We are basically living through George Orwell's 1948 story. Yeah. Okay, this is what we are seeing here. We are seeing people who gain power, who are using it to distribute wealth, to distribute influence, and they won't let it go. They don't want to let it go.
Let me move on to another issue here. The Prime Minister is leaving Hungary this week and going to the United States. Hungary was very important to project to the international community.
Exactly.
The situation of the state of Israel, the support that we're getting, those countries who understand that Israel is being singled out by international forums. In Hungary, it was, and not only have they announced that they're withdrawing from the ICC, the Czech Republic today announced that it will be opening up an embassy in Jerusalem, and the Prime Minister is being called by the President of the United States for several reasons. You have experience with economy. One of the things that Israel wants to raise, we have the tariff war going on. Israel was also hit by this. And I have to say, as an Israeli, justifiably so. We had unbelievable tariffs on American products here. And the government already announced that it was reducing that. But he's going there for that and for other reasons. Anything you have to comment on that?
Well, I think it will be a great success for Bibi, for Netanyahu, if he can get these tariffs, down, or maybe get some grace period. After all, we are coming out of a very taxing war. Huge amounts of money went out to wage this war, to win this war. We are winning, thank God.
And so far, our economy has been very stable.
It's stable, and the projections are for a renewed growth this year. Basically, the Bank of Israel believes it's going to be even better than the European Union believes, and the European Union believes it's going to be 3.7% this year. So by any accord, it's going to be very nice. The growth is going to pick up again.
If I can just give a historical background to this, every war that Israel has been engaged in, Six-Day War, Yom Kippur War, Lebanon War, first and second, there was also always a hit to our economy. And these were wars that lasted anywhere between a few weeks to a month plus. Here we have a war that's been going on for a year and a half. And yes, there's a bit difficulties, but all in all, Israel's economy has been very stable.
And this
is because of years of success on the part of Netanyahu with running the economy here.
100%. And I would say chapeau to Treasury Minister Smotrich for how he handled this war. Right. From the very beginning, it took a courage to decide that he's going to keep the Israeli economy working and ongoing. No, big vacations and everybody stays home, even during the hardest days of the war.
Yeah, we didn't shut down the economy.
Keep the engine running. Right. Keep the engine running, and very good fiscal discipline to keep the budget deficit close to 4%.
People have to realize here that we had around 250,000 to 300,000 Israelis who were taken out of their homes, were moved into hotels, moved to different schools. Their businesses were shut down in the north of Israel and around the Gaza area. 300,000 Israelis their lives were turned upside down, and the government covered every one of their expenses over this period.
We are talking the billions here.
Right.
Talking the billions, and not talking about the entire economy losing days of work when Iran hit us twice, when we had the few weeks after the shocking attack of October 7th and so on. So all in all, very good job by Smotrich and by the government. Very good job. I think excellent job in maintaining our robustness of the economy and being ready to launch back with growth. So seems like 2025 is going to be okay, more than okay. 2026 even better. I think we have the gas working for us. Right. We have the military export capabilities working for us. Huge orders are coming.
And by the way, and I have to mention this because every time you talk about Israel and its economy and the aid that we get from the United States, a lot of people, of course because you're getting American aid. Just to remind people that by agreement with the United States, almost every penny of the $3.5 billion we get a year is spent in the United States, meaning back into the American economy. Exactly. And the aid we received in the past year, we use that aid to purchase weapons and ammunitions from the United States. So yes, we're getting, and we're not in any way belittling that assistance of the United States, but the American people are not, like in other places around the world, are not subsidizing our war here, but are assisting us, and we're using it for the benefit of the American economy. It's a give and take to both countries. 100%. Not to mention the fact you come from high tech, you know that every high tech invests in R&D. We are the R&D when it comes to the military economy, etc. We are the R&D for American military. Everything we train here, everything we use, all the experience we gain is shared with the United States.
I think
so it's important to mention that.
Of course, I think the last year and a half has proven to the Israeli public and also to the American public, first of all, how important this alliance is,
right,
and how difficult it was for us to be, I would say, somewhat betrayed by the Biden administration, right, who, as you mentioned, we bought all this ammunition, all those D9s and so on. They never sent it.
Right.
Okay? They never sent it during our time of need. Look, we were attacked barbarically. It's a sick attack. It's the mechanical orange type attack. This is what happened here. And 1 or 2 months later, the Biden administration allowed Hague to take us to court.
Right.
They started threatening us. Don't go into Rafah, don't go into Gaza.
All these things that eventually are the things that broke Hamas and made at least the release of over 100 hostages came because of Israel's military pressure.
Exactly. Now, The one thing to notice, of course, is the correlation between the pressure that came from the Biden administration and the riots on our streets that got Ronen Bar confused about his position, about his responsibilities, about his duties towards the Israeli public. I would say that, seriously, I'm saying as a citizen, I'm feeling very uncomfortable with the Shabak. What we see here now is something that I can accept in Syria, in Iran, in Afghanistan, in I don't know, in maybe in Turkey, not in a democratic society. This cannot continue.
Just to stress your point.
They are apprehending journalists.
So just to stress that point that you're making, these groups that are orchestrating the demonstrations in the streets of Israel, which originally, and we know that everybody involved in them were involved in demonstrations for the past decade against this government.
Exactly.
Democratically elected government, but they were saying it was for the hostages. And it's been discovered with what is happening in the United States, exposing that U.S. aid had funded a lot of these non-for-profit organizations that have been in the leading these efforts against the Israeli government. Now it's no longer hidden.
Yeah.
They were using this excuse of the hostages for over a year, but in the past few weeks it became very clear that these are politically motivated, not only against the government of Israel, but against the state of Israel.
Against the state of Israel. And it all started, in my humble opinion, I've written about it quite a long essay, in 2015, when Netanyahu stood against Obama's doctrine for the Middle East. Obama's doctrine was based on what? He wanted to appease the Iranians and to create some sort of a balance between an Iranian regional superpower and the Israeli superpower. He thought that us coming to some sort of an agreement with the Palestinians will somehow oil the wheels of this doctrine. And Netanyahu figured this out. He said, no way. He came to the Congress against the will of Obama, and he spoke to the houses. And eventually, when President Trump came to power, he canceled the agreement based on a brilliant Mossad operation to bring the entire archive from Iran and to give the proof to President Trump to show these guys were lying all along. They are still developing a nuclear weapon, and this entire agreement is bogus. Okay, so when Obama and his team realized that Netanyahu is not going to budge, they started everything. I believe this entire thing is like a color revolution. We saw the same flags when they talked about taking the gas out of the
right. We're talking about gas that would make us economically independent. These elements were against that.
Any element that will bring independence to Israel, more independence,
and maintain the conservative government, the right-wing government.
They were against.
Yes,
they were against, and again and again and again and again. So we are seeing these are the same people, the same faces for more than a decade, and everybody understands it. They are diminishing numbers. People do not adhere to that anymore. People understand that seriously, those riots and those demonstrations, they cause life of hostages, to my humble opinion. Yes. Okay, just think if you're Sinwar and you're seeing that. You don't need to think. He said it.
Exactly.
He said it with his own words. And this particular piece of information was withheld from the prime minister, so he wouldn't know it.
Right.
And the people who gave this piece of information to the prime minister
were then apprehended.
And questioned.
By Shabak.
In order to create a narrative and to build this narrative. So there's a coalition here between people from the judiciary system, people from the Shabak, people from the media, and some political figures, obviously, that are working in tandem to create a narrative that Netanyahu doesn't want the hostages. We just want to, we don't mind if they're all dead.
Right.
And the facts are a bit different, right? More than almost 200 of them are back in our hands.
I want to conclude with giving a bigger picture and a more optimistic of what is happening. The war that we went to right now has been able to completely destroy the Iranian and its proxies. And now with the election of Trump and the Americans readdressing what is going on here in the Middle East, one of the things we see is when they kept talking to us before about the day after, and Netanyahu refused to discuss it. Now we know that the day after is going to be the removal of Gazans from the Gaza Strip. They can choose to go wherever they want around the world. And the United States has this bigger picture of changing this conflict that's going on. That was the topic that we discussed on the radio show when you gave this broader picture of what is happening here in the Middle East. And we can end on that so people understand where this is probably, hopefully going to.
Okay, so basically the U.S. have three major opponents in the international arena, right? They have the Russians, the Iranians, and the Chinese. In President Trump's view, and I think in any reasonable person's view, the biggest challenge is posed by China. Now, when he was going to this trade war that is now coming out, facing all these three as an axis wasn't a good idea at all. So us bringing to the table after 1.5 years of very taxing war, we brought to the table something very big for the U.S., I would say, policy or potential, right? We basically knocked out the Iranian player.
And it's not only Iranians. People have to realize the Iranians are supported by Iran and by China.
By China.
And by taking out these abilities, for those who are asking, what is the benefit that the United States has with its relationship with Israel? And here is where, when you have the media diverting attention away from the successes.
Yeah.
Israel proved, I don't want to say that they're impotent, but they're not as dangerous as was perceived before. And the United States, which supports Israel, and our abilities are based on American, that shows a huge American abilities compared in facing these enemies of the United States.
But look at the benefits that America reaped in this situation. Number one, look what Iran did here. Iran threatened the naval routes, right, with the Houthis and so on. So who were the first people to go and attack the Houthis, right? Israel. You're talking about Hezbollah and the Syrian people and what they allowed Russia to do inside Lebanon and inside Syria. And now we completely collapsed the Assad regime. We completely annihilated his military, and Russia is out of Syria, right? You talk about the Iranian threat to Saudi Arabia. Talk about the Iranian threat to the entire Gulf. Talk about the Iranians supplying arms and weapons to the Russians.
Right.
Talk about them supplying, I don't know what percent, probably more than 40% of the Chinese oil needs. So they are sitting there smack in the middle of the problem of the U.S., and they were trying to, somehow finish us with their octopus arms. But Hamas, Hezbollah, Syria, right?
The Houthis, the Iraqis,
So now, different than a year and a half ago, now the U.S. has an option.
Right.
An option to kill or to annihilate one major threat out of the three. I think a year and a half ago, if you would go and present to any American president the idea that he can now go and airstrike Iran and probably instigate something internal that eventually can evolve into toppling the regime, he would say no. It's not very possible. But now, a year and a half into this conflict, when we did what we did to the entire powers that they have in their hand, look, Iran cannot come here to Israel by land, right?
Right.
They don't have the air force or the missile power to do anything of that sort. So what they had are a bunch of proxies and this nuclear program. So the proxies are gone. The nuclear program is now completely exposed because the surface-to-air missiles capabilities have been diminished significantly. And we are now coming to the money time. They have about 250 kilograms of enriched uranium. It's enough for 5 to 6 bombs that they can construct as soon as they figure out how to do the nuclear head properly.
Right.
It's a few months away or a year away, and now is the time to take this capability away from them.
And it's important to stress, if you see their missile technology and capability, and these were Iranian missiles, These missiles were directed at Israel, but it's never about Israel. It's what Israel represents. We represent Western civilization. And once these missiles would then be a threat to Europe and to European abilities, this was all taken out by Israel. And they have to understand this threat to Iran by Iran is not an Israeli problem.
It's not an Israeli problem. I challenge every viewer to show me one footage of Iranians burning the Israeli flag without burning the US flag next to it. We are the small Satan, and the US is the big Satan, and these are fundamentalist Islamists that will take no prisoners, that will give no quarters. They are saying it. Once they have this bomb, they will use it. And just to imagine, and I call upon every Israeli or American citizen to imagine a situation where on the 7th of October, midday, Sinwar would come out on television and would say, I ask that the entire Israeli military withdraw immediately, or else this here, a suitcase that contains a small nuclear device, and I have 2 of these in Judea and Samaria hidden somewhere, will explode. Okay? And this is the meaning of nuclear umbrella that Iran can give to the proxies. Okay? Just imagine what situation we would have been in. So anyone who is taking lightly this type of threats, I think is irresponsible to the next generations and also to our generation, because it's not going to take more than a few years before we see this in action.
And I can conclude by simply saying, if you saw what happened here in Israel, there were a lot of Israelis who never believed that this would happen. Learn from our experience, listen to the enemy, don't allow them to go forward. Even if they wear suits and they act and they speak in a very calm tone, listen to what they're saying behind that.
Listen to what they're saying and look at what they're doing. I would like to just finish with one note. I've been in the left for my entire life. I was part of the Avodah party.
The Labour Party.
The Labour Party. I was part of Rabin's people. I actually helped Ehud Barak win the election against Netanyahu. I worked for his campaign, okay? And I looked at what the Palestinians are doing with what we offered to them during the Oslo. And I was for the Oslo Accord, I have to say, I have to admit. But once I realized what's going on, and I saw with my own eyes what is going on and what is the demeanor of the other party, the other side, for me, this is a dead avenue. Okay, there's no way I can be convinced again to trust the other party, right? The people who suffered the most during the attack are the people from the kibbutzim next to Gaza. These are the people who were for the Itnatkut, for the disengagement. They were the people who took people to hospitals in their cars. The people who have had Gazans work on their premises. And these are the very same Gazans who gave the names of the entire families to the Nukhbas. When they came to the kibbutzim, and the father and the mother and the daughter were sitting on the floor, and the son was in the attic trying to hide, they knew the name of the son. And they came with pictures. Where is this boy? Okay? So this is how I believe them, and I can believe in them. Okay? So we look at what they do. We listen to what they say, and we always remember that we have the responsibility to take care of our own lives. Exactly. And to me, Ronen Bar and his organization are putting my life at risk. And my freedom at risk. And this needs to stop.
Well, let's hope for the best. I wish you a Chag Pesach Sameach.
Thank you very much.
We'll have the Chag HaCherut, the holiday of freedom of the Jewish people. May we continue to have that freedom and the freedom which we can defend ourselves and protect ourselves in. Moshe Ashkenazi, a strategic consultant for high-tech and business ventures in the world, internationally, former intelligence officer in the IDF. I would also say an influencer on Israeli social media. Thank you for being with us here. Let's always hope for the best for Am Yisrael.
The best for Am Yisrael. Thank you, Daniel. Chag Sameach.